All right, these are going to be the quotient with radicals notes. If you haven't already done the simplifying radicals and multiplying radicals, you will definitely need to do those first because you will have to do both of those things with what we're doing. So one rule in math is that you have to have simplified fractions or quotients when you have square roots. And what that means is there can be no radical in the denominator. All right, so our job, what we're going to be doing today, is get rid of the radical in the denominator. The way we do that is that we multiply both the numerator and denominator by the denominator. So you'll see in all of the examples we have a square root sign, a radical, in the denominator. So what we do is we need to multiply both the numerator and denominator by whatever the denominator is in order to make that go away. The way that it goes away, or the reason it does, is because of this that we looked at with multiplying. When you take x times x, you get x squared. So you have the square root of x squared. Remember, those two are inverse operations. They undo each other. So you're just left with x. So let me go down to number 1 and show you the reason that that works. So whatever the denominator is, which is the square root of 3, we have to multiply both the numerator and the denominator. Technically, we're multiplying by 1. Sorry, this is kind of blurry. My lighting is not very good. So we're not changing the value, we're just changing what it looks like. Anything divided by itself is 1. So we're numerically multiplying by 1. We're just changing what it looks like. So what we learned with multiplying is, since you do not multiply these together, since this does not have a square root sign and that does, so you just rewrite that as 6 square root of 3 over, now this is the part where hopefully you get to the point where you can just remember that this happens. All right, otherwise if you need to take that step, that becomes the square root of 9. Now obviously that looks really not simplified. Well, the reason is if we look up here, square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 9, which is just 3. So we have 6 square root of 3 over 3. You can simplify the outside number and the bottom number. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. So our final answer is 2 times the square root of 3. So we take both the top and the bottom and multiply by whatever the bottom is. These two can't be multiplied together. Okay, so you just write them next to each other as multiplication. You can't put the 6 underneath and you can't take the 3 out. So 6 square root of 3, square root of 3 times the square root of 3 is just 3. Okay, again, if you need to take the extra step to show square root of 9, that's fine. Otherwise, hopefully we can just remember that that's going to be 3. So we end up with 6 square root of 3 over 3. These two need to be simplified. 6 over 3 is just 2. So 2 times the square root of 3 is our final answer. Number 2 has the same thing. Square root of 18, square root of 18. So can't do anything with those, so we can leave them as 8 square root of 18 all over 18. So here's kind of the issue when we do these. Square root of 18 is not simplified. All right, so you can either simplify this right now, or you can combine what we're going to simplify the square root of 18 with the 9 or with the 8 before simplifying. That's going to be up to you. Off to the side, I'm going to remember to break down the square root of 18. 9 times 2 square root, 3 square root 2. So my numerator is actually 8 times 3 square root of 2 all over 18. Okay, so this 8 still stays out in front, and then square root of 18 simplifies into 3 square root of 2 over 18. So 8 times 3 is 24, square root of 2 over 18. Then we need to say what goes into both 24 and 18. That would be a 6. So our final answer, 24 divided by 6 is 4. Square root of 2, 18 divided by 6 is 3. That's our final answer. You can never do anything with the number inside of the square root when it comes to simplifying with your fractions. That stays how it is. All right, so there's a lot of different things going on here. Some people actually prefer to simplify the square root of 18 first. That is totally fine. You can do that. One reason I don't do that is just because, as you can see down below, you're going to have to multiply things anyway. So again, there's different ways to do these, and that's going to be up to you. I'm going to show you 2 ways to actually do the rest of these. One, I'm going to go back up here and write it. One rule is that if you have square root of A over square root of B, you can break that into just one big square root of A and B, and that works backwards. If you have a big square root, and we'll be using this at the end of our learning here. All right, if you have a big square root with a fraction, you can break it into 2 separate, top and bottom. Or if you have 2 separate, just like we did with multiplication, you can put it into 1. So I'm going to show you 2 things here. We have 5 square root of 3 over square root of 6. So if we follow the same steps that we've been doing, square root of 6 over square root of 6. All right, again, you have to go back and remember the 5 is on the outside, and then the 3 and the 6 we actually need to multiply to get square root of 18. All right, so since 3 and 6 are both underneath the square root, we multiply those to put that under there. Square root of 6 times square root of 6, remember, is just going to be 6. So a lot of people think we get to stop here, but we don't, because 18 is not simplified. To save us a little time, I'm just going to go back and copy what I did up here. Okay, square root of 18 is 3 square root of 2. So I would have 5 times 3 square root of 2 all over 6. So that becomes 15 square root of 2 over 6. 3 goes into both 15 and 6. So 15 divided by 3 is 5 square root of 2. 6 divided by 3 is 2. So there's my final answer. All right, so that would be if you were doing exactly what we did in number 1 and number 2. If you want to use what I wrote up here, you can actually simplify the 3 over the 6 first. The 5 is just going to stay out in front. So what I can actually do is I can change this to 5 times the square root of 3 over 6. All right, I know it looks completely different, but that is something that you can do. Well, 3 over 6 is just 1/2. So I'm going to have 5 square root of 1/2. So 5 square root of 1 over square root of 2. Oops, sorry, I wrote 5. So all I did is I put it together into one big square root, simplified it, and then split it back apart. The square root of 1 is just 1, so I'm really down to 5 over the square root of 2. Now that's all just simplifying, and then I still need to do the simplifying the quotient part. So I still need to multiply by the square root of 2 and square root of 2. 5 square root of 2 all over 2 is my final answer. So you're going to have to decide which one you would rather do. On the worksheet, there's a couple that are really big numbers. So if you multiply them, you're might have a hard time finding the square root that goes into them. So simplifying might be easier, but that's going to be up to you. All right, so same thing here. 2 square root of 3 over square root of 18. You can do what we have been doing, so square root of 18 over square root of 18. So 2 square root 3 times 18 is 54 all over 18. Now, some of you might want to simplify this right away. I know that the 2 will become a 1 and an 18 will become a 9. Square root of 54 is going to have to get broken down. Right? 54 is 9 times 6. Square root, 3 square root of 6. So what I have is I took that 2 away. 3 square root of 6 all over 9. So the 3 becomes a 1 and the 9 becomes a 3. So square root of 3, or square root of 6 over 3 is my final answer. If I do the other way, so I do 2 and then big square root of 3 over 18, that becomes 2 square root of 1 over 6. So 2 square root of 1 over square root of 6 times the square root of 6 over square root of 6. Now, you can leave that there, or you can just know that it's a 1 and it's going to go away. 2 square root of 6 all over 6. 2 cancels out, and that becomes a 3. So square root of 6 over 3 is your final answer. So again, I know that's kind of quick, and that's 2 different ways to do it. You can decide which is easiest for you. Especially when you see 5 and 6, I would simplify them right away. All right, when there's no numbers out in front or anything. And here's the reason. If you look at this, this becomes the square root of 6 over 2, which is just the square root of 3, and you're done. There's nothing you can do to simplify that. So sometimes it will work out really nice like that. If you do it what I would consider the long way, where we multiply by the square root of 2 and square root of 2, we get square root of 12 over 4. Then I have to go through and break down the square root of 12 and do that off to the side. 4 times 3, square root, 2 square root of 3. So I have 2 square root of 3 over 4. So 1, 2. I did something wrong. Oh, this is just 2. Square root of 4 is 2. There we go. So now those cancel out to just square root of 3. So yes, it's much easier if you do that first. Now, the difference between 5 and 6, and hopefully you can recognize this right away, there is nothing that can simplify 5 over 12. So even if you tried to write it like this, not going to help you. So sometimes it works to simplify it first and sometimes it doesn't. That's something you'll just have to watch out for, or maybe you don't want to simplify it first at all. That's going to be up to you. All right, square root of 12 over square root of 12 then. So 5 times 12, we multiply those because they're on the inside together, square root of 60 over 12. So 60, I need to think of a perfect square that goes into 60, and that would be 4. 4 times 15. Square root, square root. Again, you know you're done simplifying. The only thing that goes into 15 are 5 and 3. Neither one of those are perfect squares. So 2 square root of 15. So this is 2 square root of 15 all over 12. So 2 becomes a 1, 12 becomes a 6. Square root of 15 over 6 is our final answer. Again, this is going to be probably the hardest part of our learning that we're going to do in these 3 weeks.